The Caswell homestead was located on Adams Road, a few hundred feet north of Big Beaver Road at 16 Mile. The house was in good structural condition and had witnessed storms, raids, and all forms of progress from about 1830 until 1966. A local group now known as the Troy Historical Society purchased the house and moved it to Troy Historic Village to preserve it. Poppleton School was originally located in the southeast corner of Section 20 in Troy Township. Today, what is the corner of Big Beaver Road and Crooks Road. The land on which the 1877 school was constructed belonged to William Poppleton, an early Troy settler. The one-room school was moved to the Village Green at the Troy Museum and Historic Village in 1980. The interior of the schoolhouse was restored to appear as it may have in 1880. The original general store was built in 1832 and was the sole place where settlers and later residents could purchase everything from food staples, such as flour and sugar, to canned foods and penny candies. The original historic general store at northeast corner of Livernois and East Square Lake Roads was demolished in 1963, but the Troy Museum and Historic Village was determined to recognize the centrality of the building to the history and growth of Troy, and built a representation of the original general store on the village premises.
When this store was built, it was the bus stop, the train stop for the Detroit Urban Railroad. And the Detroit Urban Railroad ran from Detroit out through Troy, through Livernois, out to Romeo, and on over into Pontiac. And that was their main transportation for people. It closed during the Depression because it went bankrupt during the Depression. As a kid, I always remember coming over to this general store on the front porch, and it was kind of a hangout for all the ruffians. So my mother would always say, "You can't go to that general store without us because it's a tough place to go."
Troy Corners, the city of Troy, was an unclaimed wilderness when Johnson Niles moved here with his family from New York in 1821. As a farmer, carpenter, innkeeper, and merchant, Niles did much to develop the area, offering advice and encouragement to the settlers who followed. By 1834, the township included over 1,100 inhabitants, and the thriving village of Troy Corners had grown out of Niles' original settlement. His original home, a log cabin, was replaced by this house, built a few years after Niles arrived.
Okay. Johnson Niles moved to Troy when it was the Northwest Territory. And in 1837, he built this house. And later became a Michigan senator, postmaster, had several businesses in the area. And he was one of the people who came up with the name Troy because they came from New York. And they were looking for a name for this area. And he said, well, let's call it Troy after the town from New York that I know. So that's how Troy got its name, from Johnson Niles, who lived in this house. And he used to be, a lot of Indians lived around the house. So one time he brought an Indian down into the cellar down here, which was a root cellar, and he was seen walking out with the Indian with a jug of whiskey. And one of the constables came and gave him a ticket and said, "You got to go to court because you can't give whiskey to Indians." And so they went to court, and Johnson Niles said, "Yeah, but I'm a blood brother to the Indians, so no law against an Indian giving an Indian whiskey." And he was released. When my